Tell me, like, what's real and what's fake about this 3-game winning streak?
Well, it's all real. It doesn't matter who there's nothing fake about it.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. Today is Friday, February 23rd. So happy Friday, and thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports. And you can find this episode as well as every other episode on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching along on YouTube, please like the video below by giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Or if you're on the go and listening to the pod, please take a second to rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and subscribe if you have not already. This episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by Ibotta, our new sponsor here. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. There's no mailbag episode today. We're going to push that back to next Friday's episode. Instead, I had the chance to catch up with Notre Dame men's basketball beat writer Tom Noie to catch up on the latest with the scorching hot men's basketball team. That's right. The Irish have won 3 in a row, and we're starting to see some real signs of life and growth out of this group, and they have a chance to really finish the season out strong. Check it out. All right, I'm joined now by a great friend of the program, Tom Noie from the South Bend Tribune. And let's start with the game we just watched on Wednesday night. The Irish went into the Yum Center and beat the Louisville Cardinals 72-50 for their 3rd consecutive victory. And Tom, you were one of maybe 12 people who got to see this game in person who's also not related to Micah Shrewsbury. So take us through what you saw last night.
A really big win against a really bad team. Like, seriously. Notre Dame was picked to finish 15th in the conference. I think if they'd redo that preseason poll, you would pick Louisville like 30th, because that is some really bad basketball from a program. And being from Louisville, you know what Louisville basketball means, not only to college basketball, but that entire area. Like, I was sitting baseline at Yum Center, and there was I tweeted a picture. There was maybe 7 minutes, or I texted it to one of my fellow Notre Dame beat guys. There's like 7 minutes left before tip, and seriously, it felt like there were 17 people in Yum Center at that point. Like, you're looking around, and that's usually not the case when Notre Dame plays Louisville. Usually when they play, it's a Saturday afternoon game. You get a good crowd. I think the last time before that, they retired Russ Smith's jersey, and they had like 18,000 people. To look around Yum Center and see maybe only 6,000 people was stunning. But then you watch Louisville, and you read everything about Louisville. Look, I know about the Louisville program because every offseason I do the Louisville preview for Blue Ribbon Magazine. So I've talked with Rick Pitino, I've talked with Chris Mack, I now talk with Kenny Payne. So I have some sense of what their roster's like. But until you see it up close, you're like, good God, how in the world did Louisville basketball come to these depths? But anyway, it was a big win for Notre Dame, not because they beat a really bad team, but because they had every reason to kind of maybe sort of take a step back. This is not the most talented Notre Dame team. They're not the most athletic. They're not the most gifted. They're not one of the better teams in the ACC. So they've won 2 in a row. They're coming off an off week. You kind of think, yeah, maybe Louisville might get some mojo rolling there, but especially when it was an 8-point game late there in the second half, you're kind of feeling the momentum of the building and thinking, you know what, this might turn, and Notre Dame could lose this lead and lose this game. And then the Irish go and do the opposite. They go on like a 19-2 run. Braden Shrewsbury knocks down those 2 threes. And seriously, before you know it, you look up the scoreboard and you're like, wait, Notre Dame's up 22 points. How did that happen? So it was a really good night against a really bad team for Notre Dame.
I was texting some of my friends during the game. Like, I've known that Louisville basketball has been bad for a while now, but when you really watch it live and you see it, it's shocking. It's like, I can't believe they have reached this level. Have you ever seen a fall from grace for any college basketball program quite like this?
No, because I loved watching Louisville basketball, especially when they would play Notre Dame under Rick Pitino, because Pitino brought that NBA type of style and those NBA type of bodies where he's just coming at you in waves with guys like Shane Mahanan and Montrezl Harrell and Russ Smith we talked about, and Peyton Siva. And they were guys, they were dudes on that team. And you look at that team now, and it's like, these guys just don't know how to play. They don't do this, they don't do that. And it's really sad because Kenny Payne he's one of the nicest guys around. Like, everybody talked about what a great guy, what a nice guy Mike Bray is, or Mike Bray was when he was a coach at Notre Dame. Kenny Payne's the same way. He's a great guy, but he just isn't a really good coach, and it's probably not going to happen for him at Louisville. So now they're going to start over. And I had it in one of my notes pregame. They've had 4 coaches since Rick Pitino left. This will probably be number 5, whoever they get in the offseason. And it's something where you thought Kenny Payne had a rebuilding project when he walked in the door, what was left for him with the Chris Mack situation and Mike Pegues as the interim coach. But this is going to be an absolute total rebuild, maybe even more so than what Micah Shrewsbury had up here when he arrived in Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's why I felt Notre Dame could go into this one and maybe they could sleepwalk a little bit, given the fact that Louisville is so bad that maybe they didn't come with the level of intensity that they needed to win. And that's not the case. I mean, Notre Dame went wire to wire in this one. I thought that was probably the most impressive part because they should expect to beat this team, and they did. Now it's their 3rd consecutive win. If you look at the teams they beat, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and now Louisville, that's not necessarily a gauntlet in the ACC, but I think it's still an accomplishment. So tell me, like, what's real and what's fake about this 3-game winning streak?
Well, it's all real. It doesn't matter who there's nothing fake about it. When you can turn all those hard lessons that they learned in having to lose to Virginia and then having to lose to Duke and having really not a really good effort at Pittsburgh and all the teams that this Notre Dame team had to go up against early in non-conference play, and finally turn this around. Like Micah Shrewsbury said last night in his presser, where, when it was an 8-point game that we talked about earlier, you kind of thought, well, how is Notre Dame going to make enough plays? Or are they going to do what's needed to get out of here with a win? And Micah Shrewsbury said all the hard lessons that program learned early in the season, they were able to put to use and say, that's not going to happen. Even Marcus Burton said post-game, he said, when it was an 8-point game, and Micah mentioned it too. Micah said, I wasn't even able to get to that huddle when we called timeout when they cut it to 8 and say anything because Marcus Burton was already talking. And that was phenomenal to see. Here's a freshman point guard, 25 games now, 26 games into his college career, and he's taking control of the huddle. He's like grabbing guys saying, look, he even said to me, he said, guys were nervous at that point. They were a little scared, but he's like, look, we're good. Like, we're good. We're up 8. We're going to do this, this, and this, and we're getting out of here with a win. So it showed not necessarily that they could beat a bad basketball team, but the growth that this program has had since early January, since December. Like, when you go on the road with Notre Dame and Notre Dame wins a road game, inevitably somewhere along the line in post-game media, somebody's going to ask Micah Shrewsbury about the Citadel. And when you hear that, you're like, you're tired of listening to the Citadel stuff. But he said it again last night because he was asked about it. He said it was a real turning point moment for this program to where they had to be better, he had to be better, and they didn't know, and Micah Shrewsbury didn't know when that was going to pay off, but eventually it was going to pay off. And I think it's just starting to pay off now because those are those aren't really good basketball. Georgia Tech and Louisville are really bad. Virginia Tech is kind of middle of the road, but those are games that this program should start win. And the fact that they're winning them now, that's another step for this program to get back to where they believe they should be.
Yeah, to me, that story that you just told about Burton taking control of the huddle, it shows growth. And it's encouraging because it makes all those losses and all the really bad games that we've had to watch this season, it's like, okay, that was not fun in the moment, but at least they're taking the lessons from those games and they're applying them to the future. They're not just letting the issues compound and let matters get worse. So I think maybe my favorite part about last night's game was watching Braden Shrewsbury light it up. I think when you and I talked earlier in the season, he was really struggling. And then the last time I had you on, he had a really good game the night before. Probably his best game of the season so far. Last night, he goes 7 of 11 from 3. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, his entire family was in attendance for this game because Micah grew up in Jeffersonville right across the river. So what was it like to watch him perform that well in front of his entire family?
When you're talking about something that Notre Dame did, you always have to remember what the opponent didn't do. And last night, good God, could anybody on Louisville go out and look at number 11? Like, did they have any sort of a scout sheet that said Braden Shrewsbury, 3-point shooter? Because everybody on Louisville's basketball team treated Braden Shrewsbury like he had COVID. Like they didn't want to go anywhere near him. He had open shot after open shot after open shot. And Braden actually laughed about it with me afterward. Because I said, was anybody on Louisville ever going to guard you? Like, don't you look at it, come down on a possession when you're going to shoot a 3 and think to yourself, wait a minute, are you still not going to guard me? Like there were so many open shots that he had and open shots that he missed. He made 7 threes. He very well could have made 10 and tied the school record last night. So it's something where, and I ran the numbers today, it's something about playing on the road in the ACC that Braden Shrewsbury just embraces. And there need to be more guys in this program that embrace the road atmosphere like Braden Shrewsbury does. You take away his game against Miami, that's a throwaway game. First ACC game on the road, first ACC game in his career when he went 2 for 10 from 3. But since then, in 6 ACC games, Braden Shrewsbury's averaging 16.1 points per game. He's playing 28 minutes a game, and he's shooting 23 of 43, which rounds out to 53% from 3 on the road. So good thing Saturday's game is on the road because Braden Shrewsbury may have another big one against Syracuse. We'll see.
There's a funny moment on the broadcast, and I'm sure you didn't catch it because you were actually there. And I didn't necessarily love the crew and the commentating throughout the game, but I think it was Tom Crean had a funny line when Braden hit a wide open 3. He's like, yeah, you can't leave Braden, you can't give Braden any space, let alone enough space to drive a semi-truck through. And I did get a kick out of that. It was a good line, and he played really well. As you look at the roster and how they've developed as the season has gone along, which player has improved the most in your mind from the beginning of the season till now?
I like what Logan Himes has been able to do. I like what J.R. Knesny did last night. He was very efficient. He only played 10 minutes. I think he's still on some sort of a minutes restriction with the ankle that he tweaked before the bye week. To see J.R. Knesny, I forget what his line was, but at one point he was at a plus 21 for plus minus. So it's been a little bit of every guy, like Marcus Burton. There's still stuff with every guy in this roster, Tyler, where you see him do stuff that's really good that they didn't do in December and January, and then you see him do stuff that they're still doing in December and January. Like Tay Davis, I like when Tay Davis, if you can just give Tay Davis a straight line to the basket, give him the ball, and say, all right, go figure it out. He'll figure it out. But then last night they left him open in the corner for a 3, and you could see him hesitate a little bit, and then he goes and shoots it. And right after that, there's a timeout, and Micah Shrewsbury runs right to Tay Davis and goes, "What are you shooting for? Like, why are you shooting that ball?" And he says something to Tay Davis, and Tay Davis walks away. And then Micah Shrewsbury needs to say something, so he goes to Pat Driscoll, one of the referees, and he's basically telling Pat Driscoll, "This guy's shooting like whatever he's shooting." I think it's like maybe 20%.
4 of 32 on the year. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could see him. He's like, he's 4 of 32 from 3. Why is he shooting the 3-pointer? So it's something where there's been growth for guys like Tay Davis and Marcus Burton and Braden Shrewsbury, but they still fall back into those habits where they'll settle for a shot they shouldn't take. They'll try to do something they shouldn't do. And it's still such a young team that's still, you can see they figured some stuff out, but they're still trying to figure out what it takes day to day, possession by possession, game to game, to be an elite ACC men's basketball team.
We'll be right back with Tom Noie, but I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you about our new sponsor, Ibotta. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys and more, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what it is you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user can earn $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, so you can buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't really amount to much. With Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. What do you think about Kerry Booth and Kebajai and how they've developed as the years gone along? Personally, I thought they'd be a little bit better at this point, but I still thought they showed good effort last night, and I still think the ceiling is high for both of them.
Absolutely. And understandable that it's been so up and down with both of those guys because, and Micah says a lot, likes to say all the time, Kerry Booth should still be in high school. He's that young, and he looks it, and he plays like it. Like you can see the wheels are still spinning in his head when he's got to go double the post or he's got to go figure out if they're going to take away my open three from straight out front. Where can I go and where are my spots I can get my shots in? So it's coming for Kerry and it's coming for Keba. I think Kebajai would have been greatly served this season had Notre Dame had an experienced big man who knew what to do in the low post, who could score, and not have to rely so much on Keba. Like he's good in spurts, but you can also see like he's sometimes overmatched in what he's asked to do. Maybe that will come with growth and experience. But if they had another big man with Keba, I think a lot of the pressure would be off Keba and what they ask him to do on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah, he's playing 25 minutes a game. It's probably a little bit too much than what he's ready for right now. But still, it's just like, I guess if they're going to struggle this year, at least you can hope to get some of those problems out early on and they can develop with more time on the court so long as it doesn't affect their confidence. Okay, the Irish play on the road on Saturday against Syracuse. Notre Dame has not had a great history at that place. What do you expect to see from the Irish on Saturday?
Well, let's hope they don't go up by 20, Tyler, like they did a couple of years ago when they're up 55-35 against Syracuse and just cruising in that place. And I've been there when Notre Dame has gotten on rolls and the crowd just goes silent and it's just an absolute quiet cavern of a place. So they were up 55-35, I think in 2020 and wound up losing that game, losing the lead, losing the game. It's going to be a hard ask for this Notre Dame team, even though they've won 3 in a row, even though they're confident on the road, even though they've got a little swagger about themselves, because Syracuse does stuff. 2 things about Syracuse that will drive Notre Dame nuts. They've got really good guards in Judah Mintz and J.J. Starling. Hey, remember J.J. Starling? He's playing a lot. He's doing a lot for the Orange. He leads the ACC in minutes played this year. So he starts. He never comes off the court for Adrian Autry, which is what the kind of role I think that he envisioned for himself as a college basketball player. So they've got good guards in Mintz and Starling, and the one thing that's really a red flag with this team is they lead the ACC and they're 16th in the nation in steals. They go after the ball. They're tipping it away. They're getting deflections. They're getting runouts. So Notre Dame's going to have to be really good with the basketball. And when they haven't been on the road against Virginia, against Pittsburgh, against Duke, then you're looking at double-digit losses. So it's going to be a tough ask because Micah Shrewsbury he's the first to say he doesn't look at anything about where they're playing, whether it's the Pete, whether it's Cameron Indoor Stadium, whether last night at Yum Center when he's got 175 of his family and friends in the stands. He doesn't look at anywhere they play. He just looks at that 94 feet of court, and that's it. But when you go into he tells his guys the same thing. Don't be afraid. Like, don't look at the building you're in and be like, whoa, we don't have a chance. But when you walk into the Carrier Dome for the first time, it is different, and it's intimidating. And this is a group that has not played in that building. So that's a tough ask to go into that building for the first time, to play that basketball, that Syracuse team that's got a lot of confidence on Jim Boeheim Day. Boy, big shock that on the same day that Notre Dame is playing, on a Saturday noon game, they're going to honor Jim Boeheim afterwards. So it's going to be a tough ask on Saturday for Notre Dame, but they're more prepared and they're better suited to go in and embrace that atmosphere and embrace everything that's about it now than when they were losing 7 in a row.
Okay, so I take it you're probably not going to pick the Irish on Saturday. And then after that game, they have 4 more regular season games left. They got Wake Forest at home, Clemson at home. Then they got to go to Chapel Hill to take on the 10th-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels. And then they close the regular season on the road against Virginia Tech. So over the course of the next 5 games, what do you think would be a reasonable and yet impressive finish to the regular season?
Can you at least hold serve at home and get one of those last 2 home games, whether it's Wake or whether it's Clemson? Get one of those. I think you can actually get both if you really play and grind. Like Wake Forest, they love to score, but teams that love to score don't like teams that play defense against them. And Notre Dame will defend. We know that about this Notre Dame team up to date in ACC play. So can you get Wake? Can you get Clemson? And then take your chances against Virginia Tech, because it's a tough ask of this team that is still light on experience, light on savvy, to go to Syracuse and win, and definitely go to North Carolina and win. So let's see what happens with those other 3 games. If you can get to 7 wins in the league, that's a huge step. 7-13 is not going to be anything that Micah Shrewsbury is going to be pumped about. Yes, yeah, we won 7-13. But to come off and after being 3-17 and to win 7 games, big first step in my opinion.
I agree. All right, let's take a step back here, and I want to ask you a couple big picture questions before I let you go. Next year, starting to look ahead, Notre Dame has a pretty solid recruiting class. I believe they're ranked 26th right now. It's led by Sir Muhammad. What are your thoughts on the way that this new staff has recruited and their strategy since taking over?
Still to be determined. Like those 3 guys that they got in this upcoming class with Sir Muhammad, with Cole Serta, with Garrett Sundra, those were all relationships that were established pretty much while Micah Shrewsbury and to an extent Mike Farrelly were at Penn State last year. So those were 3 guys when Micah made that transition to South Bend. Those were 3 guys that kind of that gravitated toward him and said, okay, we're going to follow Micah Shrewsbury. Now I still need to see, and I think a lot of people need to see, what is Notre Dame recruiting going to be like to get Notre Dame kids to Notre Dame, not necessarily get Penn State kids to follow Micah Shrewsbury to Notre Dame. So the jury's still out as far as what this staff is going to be like recruiting. You can't fault them for the effort. Like there was a list, I think the Indianapolis Star had, of their top 7 current high school juniors. Notre Dame is involved heavily involved with 5 of them. So they've got Indiana guys on the staff. They've got Micah Shrewsbury, who's known as a recruiter. Now, can you close that and get some difference makers? I think Sir Muhammad is borderline difference maker. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if Sir Muhammad stepped in and started as a freshman next year. That's how highly coveted, highly respected, and highly regarded he is viewed by the coaching staff. Like, he's one of the missing pieces that this current roster doesn't have. I don't know about Garrett Sundra or Cole Serta. I want to see them in more of a college setting, but it seems like recruiting's going well. But it was going well with Mike Bray, and we'll talk about a guy that Mike Bray quote recruited. He can get guys to campus. The problem with Mike Bray was he couldn't keep them on campus. Micah Shrewsbury has been able to, and his staff, they've been able to get guys interested in Notre Dame. Can he get them to sign with Notre Dame? That remains to be seen.
In college basketball and really college football and all college sports as well, high school recruiting is only a part of the equation because the transfer portal is huge when it comes to acquiring talent, building your team. And I feel like college basketball has gotten older since the inception of the transfer portal. And Notre Dame is obviously operating in a unique space when it comes to the transfer portal and the admissions process and all the difficulties that every athletic program at the university has to deal with. So how aggressive do you think this staff is going to be in the transfer portal after the season?
I think they have to be really aggressive in getting guys, not really saying to others on this roster. And there have been guys that cover Notre Dame on this beat that have said he's going into the portal, or that guy, he's a portal candidate. That guy's a portal candidate. I would be absolutely stunned outside of Tony Sanders and Matt Zona, who both have their COVID years left, if anybody on this roster besides those two, like those two, if they want to play, if they want an experience other than being back of the rotation guys that they are at Notre Dame, and they want more of a bite of the playing time apple, they're going to have to go do it at a program other than Notre Dame. So I could see both Tony Sanders and Matt Zona going into the portal. They'll both graduate in the spring. And if they want to go somewhere and play, they've got to go do it other than Notre Dame. So outside of those two, I don't expect anybody on this current roster to go to the portal, because as we talked about earlier, they're all Micah Shrewsbury type of guys. Like, they're here because Micah Shrewsbury's here. Kabajai or Tate Davis or Julian Roper or whoever, they came here to play for Micah Shrewsbury. And I don't see any of those guys saying after 1 year, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else and play because I want to do this or I want to do that. They're here for him. So I expect all of them to stay. But if you're Micah Shrewsbury, you've got to go to admissions and say, look, we need two guys out of the transfer portal. We need a veteran scoring guard that's going to be like, you know what? F this. I'm going to get us a bucket when we need a bucket. And you need a veteran big man. Like Kabajai, he's serviceable, but you can't be serviceable in the ACC. That'll get you beat too many times, then win you games. You've got to get a veteran big man and a veteran scoring guard to kind of complement the other pieces that are around them. If they can get those two aspects, and they couldn't do that last year, but if they can do it this year, then that's going to be another step in 24-25.
Yeah, and I would think that the pitch to these transfers is probably a little bit better this year than it was last year, because Absolutely. I can't even imagine trying to sell a talented grad transfer or even an undergraduate transfer to try to come to Notre Dame when everyone knew the uphill battle that they were going to have to climb. But I think now with the year under his belt at Notre Dame, Shrewsbury is going to be able to say, hey, look, like, we're growing, we're building, you're the missing piece, and you're not just walking into a situation where we're just hoping to get like 12 wins. But last question now, you kind of already alluded to it. My friend Luke pointed this out to me. You wrote in a piece a long time ago about an unofficial visit from a talented prospect out of Chicago named none other than Derrick Rose. Now, apparently, he was on campus at Notre Dame for an unofficial visit. As far as I know, there is no video evidence, but you were there. You got to witness it. What went down exactly?
First of all, it was all 1,000% window dressing that Derrick Rose was on campus. Like, there was no way Derrick Rose was ever going to the University of Notre Dame as a college basketball player, because back then, you also had to be a student athlete. And Derrick Rose had no interest in going to class. Hell, Derrick Rose may have not had any interest in taking his college entrance exam, but that's another story. But I think it was a Saturday afternoon. It was in the old Joyce Center before they renovated it, so it had all the multicolored seats, had the bleachers in the upper concourse. I want to say it was a Saturday afternoon before a Notre Dame home football game against Michigan. So that was kind of a big deal that weekend. But they played pickup in the Joyce Center. I forget who else were on the teams, and there may have been a couple other visitors and a couple other prospects playing. But just watching Derrick Rose run up and down the court, you could tell it was almost like an NBA All-Star game for him. Like, he didn't break a sweat. He wasn't going to defend. He wasn't going to do this. He was just kind of there, and he knew all eyes were on him. But I remember one sequence where he went up and down the floor a couple of times, and then he got out on the break, gave the ball up to somebody just after he passed half court, and signaled, pointed to the rim. And so the guy, he had a lob pass thrown to him, and Derrick Rose just went up to get it, and he just kept going up, and he kept going up, and he kept going up, and he dunked it one-handed. And even the current Notre Dame players on that roster looked at each other and they were just they were in awe. Like, yeah, there's nobody on this team, no matter how many games we played back when they were in the Big East. There's nobody on this team that could do anything close to that. But as you were sitting courtside and you watched him, like he just kept elevating. His vertical leap was like 60 inches. Like, and he dunked it, and it was like, yeah, I do that I do that anytime I want. And he said, yeah, that's what NBA elite level prospects look like, because Notre Dame hasn't seen anything quite like that since.
It's been a long time since we've seen that version of Derrick Rose, but when it was happening, it was special to watch. I think that's a great way to end it on. Tom, thanks so much for taking the time after a very early wake-up call this morning. I really appreciate it. We'll have to do it again soon.
You got it, brother. Take care.
Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I will be back early next week. In the meantime, remember to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can follow us on X at Locked On Irish, on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod, and my personal X account at Tyler, WOJCIAK. Have a great weekend, everybody.